Good morning, Councillor Janot and Mr. Gibbon. I see Councillor Wilson's name and welcome Councillor Kelleher-Empey. If I can see that Councillor Wilson is there, then we will at least have quorum and can begin. All right, there is Councillor Wilson, and I see Councillor Butler has now joined as well, although now I see him as well. All right, we have quorum. I will call this regular meeting of Council of the Municipality of Jasper to order for September 7th, 2021. I now have 9:32 a.m. Before we begin, I want to thank Councillor Janot for his services as Deputy Mayor over the last 2 months. And I would otherwise welcome Councillor Demota to that post, but Bert, it looks like you get to continue for a while in the absence of Councillor Demota today. So I assume that you're still in the chair, regrettable as that might be for you. Councillors, you have today's proposed agenda. Are there any additions, deletions, or other changes to be made to the agenda? Mr. Gibbon.
Your Worship, if I may, just one note from administration. In discussion with council late last week, administration had proposed to bring forward a opportunity for council to consider a bylaw to require indoor masking. And we had actually informed some members of the media who were inquiring that we'd intended to bring that forward for your opportunity to discuss that today. As we all know, the province came in with new mask mandate province-wide on Friday morning, late Friday morning. And so I just wanted to acknowledge to council that we had intended to bring that forward, but in light of the provincial announcement, we did not bring that forward. I want to thank the staff that put some overtime work in to be able to have that available and ready should we need to consider it. But just an acknowledgement that we had intended to have something in front of you today. It does not appear on the agenda because of that provincial action that was taken later in the morning on Friday.
Thank you for that, Mr. Gibbon. And I would just say that I would welcome any discussion that any councillor wants to have under new business. If you were prepared to speak to either our local effort to perhaps revive the bylaw or speak to the provincial efforts, which have now apparently superseded that need. I know that some councillors were anticipating that. So if there is a need for comment on the current status, I would certainly welcome that under new business, whether you choose to raise it at this point as a new item for the agenda or otherwise. That said, is there anything else specific to today's agenda, either to add or delete or shuffle? Seeing nothing, might I have a motion, please, to approve the agenda as presented? Councillor Wilson, thank you. All those in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried. The minutes of the August 17th regular meeting of council are available to you. They've been circulated with the agenda. Are there any errors, omissions, or corrections required to be made to those minutes? Seeing nothing, I wanted to make two comments. Firstly, the format is new. It's clean and concise, a little bit different than we have seen, and that's fine. I take that's an initiative of administration. I wanted simply to make a comment on the last page of the minutes, council reports. There is an indication that Mayor Ireland and Councillor Demota attended an AUMA Board of Directors event at Jasper Park Lodge. In fact, that event was also attended by Councillor Butler and Councillor Keller-Herenthy and by Mr. Given. And I don't know how that got either not stated or overlooked in the minutes, but I would suggest that a correction be made just to add those additional names to that element of the minutes. If there is nothing else, might I have a motion to approve the minutes subject to the addition of those names under the relevant portion? Thank you, Councillor Butler. All those in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried. That takes us to agenda item number 4, presentations. We do have a presentation today by Energy Associates International on the the natural gas procurement policy, and I welcome to your screens Michelle McCary and I think Jay. I don't see him yet. Mr. Mahanaran is somewhere. I saw his name earlier. I see it again, but I don't quite see him. But Michelle and Jay, I invite you to go ahead with your presentation. Welcome to our virtual council chambers, and please proceed.
Thank you very much. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you. So my name is Michelle McCary. I'm joined by Jay Manaharan. It's a tricky one. And Jay is the managing partner. We work with Energy Associates International. We have been providing the MD of Jasper with energy supply and procurement strategies for many years, since 2013. And we're here today to speak to you about the natural gas procurement recommendations that we have for Jasper, and give you a little bit of background on what is going on in the market and what is driving these procurement strategies and supply strategies that we're recommending for the MD of Jasper, as well as the other 18 or 20 municipal clients that we serve in Alberta. I believe that you have the packet information that we had provided with a few slides that we'd like to review today. I'm going to see if there's a way that I can share my screen and bring it up on this end. If that works well, you can let me know if that comes up okay. Perfect. So we wanted to introduce a few terms or glossary of terms just to make sure everyone was familiar with some of the concepts that we'll be touching on today. A lot of the focus of what we do is watching and managing procurement strategies that align with the wholesale commodity market. So the wholesale market is slightly different than a retail market. It is, as you would imagine, kind of a bulk commodity trading market tied to a variety of different trading exchanges. And then those commodities are resold to an end use customer or a retail customer. We'll be touching on some other concepts around spot price. I'm sure everyone's familiar with spot price, for example, the price of gas that you pay at the pump. And that is a more volatile price point for commodities. It moves and changes over time. A forward fixed price is looking at a future predetermined price to kind of manage costs for a set delivery term. We also want to talk about what's called load shaped, which is something that's used to describe kind of either daily, hourly, or seasonal changes or variations in how energy is consumed, especially for natural gas. As you can well imagine, the seasonality over the winter, there's typically more gas consumed throughout the course of the winter as we heat our homes and our buildings. And that has an impact on the price of natural gas that you pay at the end of the day, as well as some of the supply and procurement strategies that we are going to touch on. One of those being a hedge or a partial hedge. And simply put, a hedge is an instrument or a commitment, either full or partial, that allows a customer to fix their price. And the intention is to avoid any adverse price changes out into the future. Certainly for our municipal clients, having hedging strategies in place is important in order to manage budgetary costs. So a few quick comments on the terms that we'll be touching on. Are there any questions at this point with regards to just some of these introductory terms? Great, I'm going to just continue down, bear with me here. All right, the next, so when we talk about procurement strategies and we talk about the natural gas procurement strategy for the MD of Jasper, I wanted to spend a minute talking about how this market is structured. And this diagram represents kind of the two key components or portions of your natural gas bill that you would see on a monthly basis, whether it be at your home or for your municipal facilities. And the same holds true actually for electricity, but in Alberta, part of our market is deregulated. And so on the left-hand side, you will see the bubble that has the commodity costs. And the commodity cost is deregulated in Alberta. It is tied to a market, a wholesale trading commodity market, such as the ACO or NGX. And there are a variety of hedging instruments and hedging products that are available to the end use customer in order to manage those commodity costs. On the right-hand side of the diagram, you'll see a bubble that has delivery costs. And we like to use the analogy of water flowing through a pipe. So the pipe itself is the infrastructure that is still regulated and legislated by the Alberta Utility Commission. It is the elements that all relate to maintenance, delivery of the commodity to your doorstep. So any costs that are associated with the pipe and how the commodity gets to your doorstep, we call delivery costs. And they typically make up about 50 to 60% of your monthly bill. And there's a variety of buckets that kind of all roll up into these delivery costs. We've got the pipeline distribution costs, rate riders, municipal local access fees, and one of the biggest ones is now the carbon tax. So regardless of what hedging strategy any customer puts in place, the carbon tax is flowed through on your bill. It is applied as a consumption tax at the burner point. So where the gas is burned, that is where the carbon tax is applied. And we've indicated, we've included a table in the presentation. I'm just going to scroll down a little bit here so we can, see the table. And this is the current level of carbon tax that is applied to all of our natural gas bills as we know it today. So the numbers in green on the left-hand side of the table shows how the carbon tax has increased kind of year over year and what it is set to change to in April of next year at $2.63 per GJ. The numbers in blue on the table are the expected carbon tax based on the current proposed plan. So depending on what happens in the upcoming weeks here with the federal election, this certainly could change, but this table is based on the current current GGPPA that was passed. And so we do expect to see, a version of this come into effect after the federal election. But again, regardless of how we manage procurement strategies, these carbon taxes, the delivery charges are all a simple flow through on your bill. And unfortunately, there's kind of very little that you can do to control those costs, other than managing kind of your general consumption down as best as possible. So flipping back to the left-hand side, the commodity area, because it is a deregulated market and there are various hedging instruments that are associated and options available to you, this is kind of the area that you have control over. You have the option to go out to market. You can see the big arrow running down to the opportunities and risks that are associated. So, because this is a commodity market, there are a variety of factors that influence the prices that are paid and offered in this market. Certainly, the COVID-19 pandemic has had impact on all energy markets, including natural gas.
Oh. I think Michelle froze there.
Well, sorry?
So you got cut out there, Michelle.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm getting a note that my internet connection is looking a little unstable. I apologize. So the markets that trade natural gas have been affected by the pandemic. Certainly credit premiums have been impacted. There has been some supply and demand fundamental changes that we will talk about in a further slide. And obviously this regulatory risk associated with what the carbon tax levels are going to be out in the future. Now, having said that, there are some opportunities because you have choice as an end use customer in this deregulated part of the industry. There is the opportunity, which the MD of Jasper has taken advantage of, to conduct a competitive, transparent procurement process for the supply of your natural gas. In working with EAI, you have the opportunity to leverage the wholesale trading markets, looking for price opportunities and the right products and terms that are going to best suit your budgetary requirements. So we're going to speak about this a little bit later, but we wanted to just explain really the main fundamentals of how the natural gas charges that you pay on a monthly basis, how they're broken out, what you have control over and what you kind of don't, and what we're doing and what our recommendations are tied to when it comes to this deregulated component of your bill, which is your commodity supply costs. So supply costs would be the water flowing through the pipe. You're charged a price based on the volume that you consume, and the distribution cost would be the regulatory costs associated with the pipe itself. Any questions that I can address at this time before we move on?
I do have a question, Michelle.
Yes.
And it perhaps is inconsequential at the end of the day, but looking at the graph, the items on the left are under our control to some extent, the items on the right, not so much. And so, although I appreciate that the carbon tax rate is not something that we can control, can I conceptualize that the carbon tax applies, in fact, on the left side to the commodity? And so, in a sense, we can control the amount we pay by controlling our consumption. So to some extent, that would fit under the left side of the graph as well.
You're right. It is tied to consumption.
Yeah, but we're talking here right now strictly on the price or the cost itself, not the consumption, right? Yes, it's tied to the consumption, but the rate is not tied. It's a regulated, legislated component, right? But you're right. You're right. You can control how much you pay on the carbon tax by reducing consumption.
Correct. So we have a an enhanced interest in energy efficiency, for example, if we can reduce consumption.
That is
We
correct.
reduce the amount that we're going to pay in carbon tax, even though we can't affect the carbon tax rate.
That's right. That's correct.
Correct.
Thank you. That was my only question.
No, absolutely. All right, so what you've heard me say a few times, commodity market, wholesale commodity market. And so our next slide is going to talk about what that wholesale energy market looks like and how it functions. And this is a diagram illustrating the wholesale energy market supply chain. And we want to explain this for a few minutes here, as it does tie into the procurement strategies that we are recommending for the MD of Jasper. So Jay, please feel free to jump in here if you'd like. But if we start on the left-hand side of this diagram, you will see that we have a rudimentary diagram of an office building representing the end use customer. So whether this is in your home or a commercial building or a municipal facility, a rec center, as a customer, when we talk about supply costs or commodity costs, you have a choice as far as who you buy your commodity from, what price and what hedging instruments you might be interested in locking into. You also have an option to buy your commodity on the spot market, which is the diagram kind of in the column under retailer and spot market. So spot market is a bit of a do nothing or a flow through type of option when it comes to hedge your supply costs. We use the analogy of filling up your gas tank at the pump. And so the price that you're paying for your gas when you drive up is a spot market price. It changes every day. It can change every day. And we don't know what that price is going to be into the future. It doesn't matter whether you have a large tank or a small tank that you're filling up, you are paying that price at the moment that you are needing to purchase and consume that commodity. So the spot price for natural gas does actually change on a daily basis. Most of our municipal customers, including the MD of Jasper, don't like being exposed to that type of potential volatility, as it makes it very difficult to manage and predict what your costs are going to be. And so the other option, if we kind of move up that column, is to look to a retailer for a variety of hedging options, fixing your price. And there's a variety of retailers in the market, many of which those names I'm sure would be familiar to you. And they are the companies that are providing you that monthly bill with all of the charges we just discussed. Now, the important thing to note is when we look at this supply chain, excuse me, is that the retailers are not alone in this market. In the very middle of the diagram, you will see a wholesaler or OTC diagram of a gentleman looking at his computer. The wholesale marketer is essentially the company or the organization that owns the asset. They might own a natural gas production facility. They might own storage facilities for natural gas. So there's a difference between the retailer and the wholesaler, and they're managed by different governing bodies in Alberta. But if you think of it as the retailer would be like the 7-Eleven storefront, and the wholesaler would be kind of like the Costco or the bulk warehouse in the background, kind of managing the bulk asset. And so, you know, if we continue further along the chain, the wholesaler operates in this market and trades these commodities with other counterparties. And this is what we call the wholesale market, is the wholesale counterparties trading these commodities on a daily, monthly, and a futures basis, 5 years into the future. And the key element or the key message that I'd like to highlight in this slide is that anytime we are talking about fixed price supply contracts or hedging options for customers, 90% of the price is made up by this wholesale market. And this is one of the things that EAI does on behalf of the MD of Jasper and our clients, is we watch and monitor and help our clients understand what is going on in this wholesale market, how those commodity prices are changing and moving over time, and why, to help us structure our procurement strategies appropriately. So again, this supply chain, when we look at it kind of now moving from the far right all the way back to the price you pay at the end of the day, 90% is made up of the wholesale market. And then the retail market adds, you know, anywhere from, you know, obviously the remaining 10%, whether that be through shaping premiums. Again, they have to adjust to how you consume natural gas throughout the course of the year. They may add some small credit premiums depending on the credit worthiness, whether you will be around in the future to pay your bills, and they're taking on some credit risk there, as well as a very small sliver for their own margin to pay for their own staff and billing and those types of functions that they provide to you at the end of the day. But again, 90% of the price that you are paying at the end of the day is really made up in this wholesale market. And that's why it's so key for us to bring your attention to it. And then on the next slide, Jay is actually going to speak about what is going on in this natural gas wholesale market and what are we, you know, presenting to for approval as far as a future purchase, and what are those costs and prices going to look like.
Take a break there.
Anything
I'll try to jump in and say one or two things here, if you don't mind. I finally got my video to work, so I'm going to bring it on right now. So the slide actually is interesting. Is you'll see the breakdown of wholesale, retail, and the consumer. Everything you see from the far right, okay, where the wholesale price is established 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years into the future. Everything to its left is cost plus. Everything is cost plus onto your left. So once we go to the wholesale market and try to lock in a wholesale price at $2, and by the time it's delivered to your door on a retail basis, everything else you see to the left is going to be shaped and they'll add losses to it. They'll add a margin on top of that, and that price will be, you know, like 10% more than the wholesale base cost. So that's where we're going, like Michelle said, we're going to be focusing on the far right here, because that's the underlying wholesale cost that builds up your entire price. The other thing I want to also quickly mention is, because we brought this whole idea about spot markets, unlike electricity, natural gas can be stored after it's been produced. So when we're looking at a hedging strategy for the town, for the municipality of Jasper, we're looking at the best of both worlds. We can go out in the future and lock 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years for a fixed price. But if we look at storage levels being very high, it's going to affect the near-term prices in the spot market. So in the past, and we'll show you an example of what we've done recently, in the recent years, that we've taken advantage of the best of both worlds. We've got a bit of certainty into the future with a 5-year, 4-year price, but when the storage levels are high, the spot prices are low, right? So we've blend your overall cost, from a cost basis, we're able to blend those two different products together. So, you know, we have this whole idea in the consumer will call a fixed and variable mortgage. So we fixed our price to a certain extent for a 5-year mortgage. Then we've remained the other 25 or 50% floating in the market. So just taking that same concept into the natural gas market is what we've done in the past for the MD of Jasper. Go ahead, Michelle.
Okay. Actually, if you want to keep going, Jay, you know, okay. The next slide is outlining, as of September 3rd, when the presentation was due, as we mentioned, these do change every day. This is a snapshot of what the forward future price for natural gas is in Alberta for these various 1 to 5 year terms. As we mentioned, this commodity trades 5 years out into the future for physical delivery. And what you're looking at in the table on the top right hand side are the wholesale, again, not shaped seasonally, but the bulk wholesale that makes 90% of the price, that is a snapshot of what natural gas is trading at today. I will note, Jay, before you jump in, that the MD of Jasper does have a partial fixed price contract in place until almost the end of next year at $2.43 a GJ. So we did have a nice, good, stable price in place for the last few years, and now we're looking at being proactive about a procurement strategy beyond that term. So starting in November 1st, actually, of 2022.
All right, thanks, Michelle. So just building on what Michelle just mentioned here. So 50% of Jasper's consumption volumes are locked at $2.43 today. And the remaining 50% has been floating on the spot market, the price at the pump. So in 2019, the average pump price, 70%, my apologies there. In 2019, 30% of your volumes have been charged at an average price of $1.82 a gigajoule. 2020, it's $2.28. And 2021 year to date, the average load shape spot price that the MD of Jasper is paying is $3.25. You see how much the price has increased in the spot market itself. And that's flowing into the forward wholesale trading market also. So when you look at the table at the very top, you'll see 2022 is trading today at $3.39. 2023 is trading today at $2.78. So if you tell Jay, hey, if you ask Jay, what is a 2-year price for gas if we bought 2022 and 2023 today? You take the weighted average of 339 and 278, and that's what you get. And then now you shape that weighted average price, and you'll get somewhere between 309 to 331. You guys follow this? So basically, when we look at the wholesale curve, we see the price of wholesale gas starting higher in 2022, coming lower and coming even lower, and then going back up again. So if you're looking at buying natural gas strategically, we want to make sure if we're going long-term, we're leveraging the wholesale curve downwards. There's no point going out and buying long-term gas if the back of the curve, the 291 and 271, is not going to bring the overall price down, right? So that's really when we're watching the market, this is why we look at what to buy and when to buy, right? So one of the reasons why these prices have moved up significantly from what you're paying today is driven because of what we've seen in COVID. COVID has actually affected the financial markets, and everything's so connected now. The equity markets, the financial markets, the credit markets, all tied together. And these trading desks that trade 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years into the future. For example, if Michelle and I were trading and we're both two different companies, and I sold gas to Michelle today for 2025 at $2.71 a gigajoule, as you see right there on the table. We do the deal today, but Michelle doesn't have to pay me a dime until she takes delivery of that gas on Jan 1, 2025. That is a very long time to wait to get paid. And in that time, a lot of things can happen. Michelle can go out of business. I can go out of business. As a result of that, credit risk has gone so high in this post-pandemic period. Or I don't think I can even say post.
Are we post? We're
Yeah.
not post yet.
Yeah, so that has really affected the credit markets, which then is affecting the trading markets also for all commodities. So when we're looking at, and also we have other factors affecting natural gas right now. As much as Canada wants to be in the game to export LNG from Kitimat, the US is already ahead of the curve. They're getting our gas for next to nothing, and they're processing it and exporting it to US and Mexico. So that's driving the overall gas price in all the trading hubs, including the one in Alberta, AECO. And we also have another issue here where the industrial demand in North America is outpacing power generation demand. So that's also affecting the gas price. So we're faced with a very new situation here in North America where gas prices are trending higher. So the opportunity we have right now, and Michelle has got, we've released an RFP in the market. We've summarized some indicative market prices from a variety of suppliers, pre-qualified, and Michelle's got the table lined up from 309 to 331 for a 2-year price, 295 to 315 for a 2-year price, 3-year at 291 to 309. The opportunity that may avail itself to the MD of Jasper's, you could be in a position to lock in for long-term gas lower than what the spot price or the price at the pump that you're paying today, or you could be paying today in the spot market at $3.25 at the table at the bottom here. So we have a window of opportunity to look and say, okay, you know what? The way the market's going right now, we have an opportunity to go into the wholesale market. And if the prices come off or stabilize, we might be able to go in and lock in for a mid to long-term contract lower than what you're paying at the pump if you were riding the spot market today. Go ahead, Michelle. Any questions, guys?
I'll just ask if there's any questions on this particular slide or any of the information to date. We only have one more summary of our recommendations, but any questions that we can address right now? Okay. All right. So our recommendations as your partner and energy supply consultants, as Jay mentioned, is we're always watching this market and we're trying to be proactive about when we're buying based on the wholesale conditions and all of the industry factors that are affecting the price of natural gas into the future. So we did release an RFP on the Alberta Purchasing Connection for the MD of Jasper to pre-qualify natural gas suppliers. That just closed last week, and we are in the process of finalizing that pre-qualification list. So we are expecting to be able to put that summary together and present that to administration fairly shortly. Our recommendation today is to continue to monitor the wholesale natural gas supply prices out into the future and look for an optimal time to actually schedule what we call a live bid transaction, which means the way that we structure the actual purchase of the natural gas happens very quickly. We align it with how the wholesale market and how those commodity traders actually trade natural gas. So we are recommending to continue monitoring, looking for an optimal time to actually go out and engage the pre-qualified suppliers for a transaction. We are continuing to recommend a partial hedge supply strategy whereby we secure anywhere from 50 to 80% of the MD's natural gas requirements at a fixed price with some exposure to the spot market. Although with spot market prices moving up, we would recommend a higher, somewhere between 70 to 80% of a hedge percentage. And typically our target date or timeline for this transaction would be prior to November of this year. As we all know, the weather starts to get colder in Alberta. Once we start heading into November and December, our gas consumption increases across the province, which depletes our storage supplies. So in general, we typically don't like to traditionally buy natural gas during the winter months, as we tend to see a slight premium on those prices. That's not always the case, but something we will continue to monitor. So our timeline would be prior to the start of our winter natural gas season, prior to November of this year, or perhaps in the early spring of next year. As the temperatures start to warm up, we start to see more gas being injected back into storage and those storage levels replenished. We often see kind of a window of opportunity and some price relief to go into the market in a live fashion and purchase the natural gas for the MD's future requirements. So starting November 1 of 2022.
So in the world we live in with natural gas, a simple analogy and why we're doing it now, even though your contract's not expiring for another year or so, it's no different than buying an airline ticket. If you're flying out from Calgary to Toronto, and you want to fly out on Christmas Eve, like December 22nd, 23rd, or 24th, buying the ticket in advance is going to be a lot cheaper than waiting till your flight or departure date or delivery date and buying your airline ticket at that time. So traditionally, we try to be proactive and take advantage of the market, because the market's pricing at the discount as from 12 to 18 months prior, right? Well, COVID has changed a lot of things right now, but as we come closer to November 1st, 2022, we'll see that forward price go much higher because of a lot of different factors. And that's really why we're trying to be proactive here to get the MD pre-qualified and ready to go to market. Thanks, Michelle.
Thank you. Any questions or anything we can address?
Councillors, I can't see any hands while we're sharing the screen. So if you have questions,
Yeah.
just to verbalize them.
Thank you. I was just going to say I'm not terribly technically adept at Zoom, and I can't see if there's any. So please just let us know. We'd be happy to discuss any of these industry or market elements or pricing options further. Oh, Councillor Butler.
Yes, it's Councillor Butler. Thank you very much, and thanks for the presentation. Very clear and informative. My one question is, and forgive me if it was mentioned in there, but I'm curious as to how you get paid, your company, and what it costs us on an annual basis, or is it indexed to consumption? What do we pay for the service you provide?
Yeah, absolutely. So it is a volume-based fee that is tied to your consumption, and for natural gas, it's 23 cents a GJ. So it's basically a line item on that bill that is calculated according to the volumetric consumption of natural gas for the portfolio throughout the month. And you pay the supplier that serves your natural gas supply our fee, and then every quarter that sum is remitted back to us for our services. And that actually hasn't changed or moved for electricity or gas in the last almost 10 years. So as consumption goes up and down, our fee is tied to that. And so certainly, we've seen some reduction throughout the pandemic as facilities were closed and things like that. And those fees do cover a variety of services that we provide. If I may just spend a second just explaining. So helping with all of this, the development of the procurement strategy around gas supply, electricity supply, and helping this request for proposal process, pre-qualifying the suppliers, and actually all the way through to conducting the live bid transaction. We also provide a variety of account management services on an ongoing basis, helping and preparing annual utility budgets, understanding how any other, regulatory or delivery costs, how those are changing over time, and making sure that we are taking that into account when we're building the utility budgets for the MD of Jasper out into the future. So we keep a very close eye on some of those regulatory risks that we identified and make sure that we are being conservative in estimating those for the MD in the future.
And those fees also account for services we provide as an extension of your utility department. So if a vendor comes to the town or the MD, in the past when Allison was the director of corporate services, when people will come vendors knocking on doors saying, put this cogen unit here, you'll save $50,000 a year. well, we will take the proposal, we'll vet it, we'll run the numbers, and then we'll provide recommendations to say, is this going to work or not, right? So we have the technical background and the utility background to validate those numbers. And that's one of the examples of the services that we provide to all the 25 munis we serve in Alberta, including the city of Lethbridge. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. And forgive me, my question isn't in any way meant to imply skepticism. I'm only interested in clarity.
Curiosity. Yep.
But I
Absolutely.
wonder, can you tell me on a sort of average annualized basis what the municipality pays? And if not, I'd be happy to see that come back at
I
another
have
meeting.
absolutely, I have a very quick, back of the napkin. It's about $5,000
Per year?
per year for natural gas services.
Well, that seems like exceptionally good value. Thank you.
We'd like to think so, but
I shouldn't say that publicly. You'll raise our rates.
I know, right? Yeah.
It's on camera, right? Yeah, okay, we got it.
It is, yeah.
Thank you for that, Councillor Butler. Other questions? In the absence of other hands, I had a couple of questions, either Michelle or Jay. Are we locked into the existing structure and the existing hedge allocation until November of 2022? That is
Yes.
regardless of whether you pull the pin prior to November 1st or wait until next spring. Our contract is our contract, and we are on that until November 1st of next year, correct?
Correct. Yes, correct.
And what is the current split between the fixed supply and the spot market?
70%. 70%.
Yeah, we have 70% is locked in at the fixed supply price and 30% is exposed to the spot market rate.
And you suggested that for current purposes, you're inclined to think it should be 70 to 80% on the fixed market. Have you seen the proposed motion that is later in our agenda, and does that meet your needs? Because it does not make reference to any allocation. It just says a partial hedge fixed price contract for up to 4 years.
Yeah.
Do you need
Yeah.
that level of specificity, or does it help you?
I think our recommendation would be to maintain the same amount of a partial hedge. That's something we can certainly speak to Bill and administration about a little bit further, just making sure that that level meets the budgetary requirements that the MD of Jasper is looking for from the utility cost perspective. I may pass that over to Bill from an approval perspective, whether that needs to be included in the motion that's set forward.
Your worship, I think when we get to the report, I can speak to that, but administration would appreciate the flexibility to work with Energy Associates to determine what the right amount of the hedge was. I think Michelle and Jay were giving an indication that given the uncertainty, having a higher amount at a fixed rate and leaving a smaller portion of our utilities exposed to the market makes sense. The specifics of that, it would be a shame if council made a motion that was 75%, and in the end, 80% would have been better, or council made a motion of 80% and 60% made more sense at the time, because we are going into this live bid situation. So I think if council, the way the motion is structured in the report, provides administration the flexibility to find the best value and best price, while acknowledging that we're going to be buying a portion of our need at that fixed price, and some portion of it, likely certainly the smaller amount, will be at the variable price.
Thank you. And I don't question the flexibility. I just wanted to clarify, because I thought you said, Michelle, that you were recommending 70 to 80%. And if that is a recommendation that affects our motion, then I want to make sure we capture it. If you're content with just having flexibility in the motion, I'm fine with that as well.
Yeah. Great.
All right, thank you then. both you, Michelle and Jay, for a really excellent presentation. Much
Thank you.
appreciated. I don't see other hands raised, so I think you've exhausted all the questions that we had. I know you've been at this on our behalf for a very long time. I would be surprised that it goes back to the days when we were an improvement district. But just for the record, we are not and have never been a municipal district. We're not an MD. We are, in fact, a municipality or a town. So
Okay,
for
Thank
future
you.
reference, you can change that, but it's
okay.
not anything that is germane to the discussion.
Michelle,
So thank you very much.
Thank you.
We really appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your time.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Goodbye. Thank you. All right, that takes us to agenda item 5, business arising from previous minutes. Is there any business arising? Councillor Butler.
Thanks very much. This is really just a notice, and this arises from discussions we had on July 27th, Committee of the Whole meeting around. I don't know if people can hear me. It looks like Mayor Ireland has vanished. I'll wait a moment. There he is.
There, yeah. I guess
All
that volatility at my end. My screen froze with your hand permanently raised, Councillor Butler. So
Okay.
go ahead.
Thank you. This is really just a notice that I'm asking for. This arises as a result of conversations on July 27th, Committee of the Whole, that we had around the status of a $24,000 allocation to reserves from the daycare operating budget, which we discussed in the context of the community childcare strategy. And I ended up with some question and uncertainty in my mind as to the status of that allocation and the other allocations resulting from motions made on April 20th. The council directed the allocation of $249,000 to reserves, additional to what had already been proposed by administration. So I would just like to ask for an agenda item for our next Committee of the Whole, being 2021 reserve contributions, so that I can understand and explain to some who have asked me exactly how those reserves have been allocated, and to confirm that they have in fact been that those funds have in fact been allocated to reserves. And so I'm not asking for any particular work or report, but just to bring that up for discussion at the next Committee of the Whole meeting, if that works for council and administration. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Councillor Butler. My view is that a request such as that to add something to an agenda does not require a motion, but if it does put administration to a burden of producing work, it might be prudent to have council confirm that it is a council request that you undertake that work. Mr. Given, can you manage this without a motion?
Yes, Your Worship, but we certainly want to make sure that all council members have the ability to get something on the agenda. This isn't particularly labor intensive. I know administration can call up that information and we can be prepared to share it without a formalized report, but certainly share that documentation at the next Committee of the Whole. So we'll put that on the agenda with Councillor Butler's name beside it, and we'll be prepared to share some information with council at that time. No problem.
All right, thank you.
Thank you for that. Is there any other business arising? If not, then we can go to agenda item 6, department reports. And Mrs. McNabb has appeared in a timely fashion.
Thank you. I'll go through a few highlights of my report. This summer has flown by. I don't recall a summer going so quickly before. We've spent the majority of our time actually has been on staffing and filling vacancies and getting staff trained. So I do want to thank Brooke Arith at the Aquatic Center and Angela Franklin. They have spent a significant amount of time recruiting new staff, hiring new staff, training new staff, and getting them in place. There's been a lot of shifting. A lot of people have left their other positions and did not come back from COVID, or from the COVID layoffs, chose to work elsewhere. So it's definitely been extremely challenging. There's a huge shortage of lifeguards throughout North America. So not only in Canada, but also down in the United States. So it's been definitely challenging to keep our facility open as much as we'd like it. We did have a few complaints with regards to our hours of operation, or how many people were allowed in the pool, or swimming lesson options. And those strictly were because of the lack of staff that we were able to get into place, and had to meet our legislative requirements of numbers. So it's definitely been a challenging summer. But special thanks out to Angela and Brooke for sure, because they have worked diligently to keep our facilities open and to keep everything clean and organized. With regards to facility repairs, we have deficiency work that has been completed on the arena boards, and some of the work that was still outstanding, although not all of it is complete. We did have a date of the end of August to be completed, and they have not been able to meet that particular deadline. They will be arriving today at some point and starting work tomorrow on replacement or reinstalling some glass. We've had challenges there with due to COVID shipping deliveries. Those things have been stuck on boats out in the harbor and not being delivered to their suppliers. So getting any supplies ordered has been definitely challenging for our contractors. So with that glass coming in and being reinstalled tomorrow, it's going to make it a little bit challenging to meet our schedule. We do have a tournament coming up towards the end of September. So we hope that nothing's going to go wrong in the startup of it, and we'll be able to meet that deadline. With regards to the activity center, we've returned to normal hours of operation. We have seen quite a few bookings already come into play. So we have a few weddings already scheduled this September. We have advanced poll starting September 10th to 13th. We have community helpers workshop. We have the Tourism Jasper live music event on September 25th. And then going into October, there's some festivals and dances and sports swaps in the dark sky. So things are starting to come back to what we call normal with face masks, but they are starting to fill up and keeping us very busy here. We've had to do another pivot with regards to the mask requirements. So that was a scramble on a Friday afternoon, trying to get that organized for the long weekend, because we did have bookings going on the weekend. So it was definitely a challenge, and our staff have been absolutely wonderful at the pivot dance. So I have to commend them. I can't imagine how frustrating it must be when you have everything already organized for a long weekend and all your staffing organized, and all of a sudden have to take a quick pivot within, a 2-hour time span. So anyway, I just want to thank them because they have been amazing. And I think that's all I needed to update on my report, unless anybody has any questions.
Thank you, Mrs. McNabb. Questions from councillors? I see none, Mrs. McNabb. I think I might weigh in here. I thought of perhaps holding this to a different part in the agenda, but I am interested recognizing the challenges that you've just faced as of Friday's announcement. Has the department or administration generally considered the future of our facilities, particularly the arena, and whether we might look at some sort of vaccination requirement? I take it that exercise is exempt, but dressing rooms, for example, in the arena, I presume that masks would apply, but I don't know how that is policed. There seems to be a move in industry for businesses to look at vaccination requirements for their own businesses. And I wonder whether the municipality might show at least moral support for that approach by looking at the issue in our own facilities.
Your worship, if I can, are you asking about for our employees? So because when you reference industry, I think typically it's industry looking at their employees and something that they have control, or are you talking about users of the facilities?
I'm talking about users.
Sure. So with respect to that, administration has briefly considered that. It's certainly something that other municipalities have indicated they may do. We would really need direction from council if that's something that council wished municipal administration to undertake. We would need that by motion and clear direction from council, given a couple facets. First off, that would be a topic that would have a significant degree of conversation in the community, no doubt, and maybe limited to a smaller subsection of the community that may have some concerns about that. And that level of concern, I think from an administration perspective, would mean that it would not be an insignificant undertaking for us to require use of the facilities to demonstrate that they had been vaccinated. So if council wished us to do that, we wouldn't undertake that administratively without clear direction from council. The other aspect is that there are a number of different organizations, particularly in the sporting area, that are creating their own standards. So Hockey Canada, for example, is creating their own standards, and other sporting organizations may be doing that. And so at this time, administration had not decided to step into that territory that the sporting organizations had been undertaking. And administration, looking at it and recognizing that would be a significant policy decision, would leave that to council to give us direction. And I guess the comment that I would have is council shouldn't underappreciate the complexity and significant caution that administration would have to undertake in terms of implementing a program such as that. So if council wanted to give us that direction, I would just advise that it is a significant project and not one that I would suggest should be done off the cuff. If council wished us to provide some information on what it would take for the municipality to impose a vaccine requirement in municipal facilities, we could bring back an information report. That report itself would be, again, not an insignificant undertaking in terms of developing and providing that info to council, but is certainly something that administration can and would be prepared to do if given that direction by council.
I appreciate those comments, and yes, it is a difficult topic to discuss. Lots of nuance and lots of public interest in outcome. I see Mrs. McNabb, you have your hand up. Go ahead.
What I have spoken to non-sanctioned sporting groups that wanted to book our facility, and they've asked about a vaccine policy from the municipality, and I encouraged them to develop their own vaccine policy if that's what they so choose. So in their groups, if they choose to do a vaccine policy, they can administer it a lot easier than we can at this particular point, because they take on the fees, they take on the registration of their hockey team or whatever team is applying. So it works significantly easier if they make a requirement, if they choose to do so for their group.
Understood. Thank you very much. Councillor Wilson.
Just in response to that, Mrs. McNabb, Unfortunately, I feel that we should be setting the stage and setting the bar. I think we've kind of been, well, it shows in the lack thereof that the provincial government has given schools. The provincial government has given school boards the opportunity to mask or not mask, and it's kind of, well, it really is downloading the responsibility to user groups. I would think. I think the municipality, if we were to look into this, I think having a overall policy rather than just user groups coming up with their own, I think would be the way that we should be going. Again, going back to the provincial government and schooling, so the most vulnerable people in our community are the 6 to 12-year-olds, and we've left it up, or the provincial government has left it up to the school boards to decide if they're going to mask in school or not. I don't think that's appropriate, and I don't think that we should be following the same. I don't think we should be doing the same. We're following the same path and downgrading our responsibilities to user groups.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Councillor Trudeau.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Mrs. McNabb, for your comments on this subject. And Councillor Wilson, this is not easy for an administration like ours to take on. It's got lots of nuances. First of all, you have kids under 12 who don't need to be vaccinated. You got kids who are between 12 and 19 who have limitations on vaccination. Then you have adults. But I do think that it appears, as things are moving very quickly around us, that there's going to be a need to ensure that vaccination or some form of protection, because they're even talking about a need for a third vaccination or booster or whatever. I do think that we have to say something, and I would like to suggest that it may be more of a general way, notwithstanding what Mrs. McNabb said. If a team decides to insist that they want to have their players double vaccinated and they play the opponent team that's not vaccinated, where are we at? Okay, so it appears that, it's not all proven, but it appears that sports is an area where it spreads. Close contacts, groupings, and look at the Edmonton Elks, how quickly it spread. And, you know, they got the huddle and they got the discussions, and clearly people weren't vaccinated. So I would think, in keeping what Councillor Wilson just says, that we should take some position in a general way. Again, as general as way, and not to make it that it's least encompassing, and something general saying we strongly suggest, or it's there's a strong requirement that people be double vaccinated, adults. I'm not sure what this vaccination requirement is for youth groups, but I kind of agree with Councillor Wilson here that we have to do something, because it is an area where people are going to congregate. And really, if people aren't double vaccinated or protected, it can spread quickly, in my opinion. So I know it's long-winded, but I think that our facilities, public facilities, are going to come under fire if we don't do something. Thank you.
Thank you. I raised the matter for two reasons: to see whether there might be interest in adding this to a future committee of the whole agenda, and I wait some direction on that. But I also appreciate the response from both Mrs. McNabb and Mr. Given that it is a really complex issue, and so if administration, I think quite rightly, is waiting for clear direction before they engage, that is fair. Council might choose, though, to debate the direction and then provide further direction to administration to prepare at least an outline of the pitfalls and challenges and obstacles that await us if we choose to enter into this. I would be certainly content to have it come forward as a matter for discussion among councillors at a committee of the whole meeting without any report from administration, understanding what their position is to date. But I tend to agree that our industry has been hit particularly hard by the new restrictions, and there seems to be a movement within industry to find a solution based on vaccinations that doesn't result in more closures to an already hurting industry, particularly the food and beverage sector. And perhaps we can provide some leadership within the community by taking a position ourselves. But I leave that entirely to a future discussion among councillors if there is interest in bringing this back to a committee of the whole for the policy level discussion, and then followed by a report from administration to deal with all the nuances that you have indicated, Councillor Janot. It is rife with nuance, with people under 12 who can't get vaccinated in any event, and how do you prove the vaccinations, because there is no obvious way to do that anyway. So there are challenges, but there is also an opportunity, it seems to me. Councillor Keller-Hrampe.
Thank you, Mayor Ireland. I'm really interested in seeing this topic come back to committee of the whole. I think we do have to protect our industry and going forward. And certainly it's going to be very complicated. And with elections coming up, I think it needs to come to a sooner committee of the whole than later down the road. I think going forward that we need to discuss this among council.
Thank you for that. Councillor Janot, is that your hand up? Yes, go ahead.
Yes, I'm just going to add again here that we seems to be talking about that it's going to be complicated. And I think the position should be by council, and certainly for administration, is to find a way to make it as least complicated as possible. Stay with as much of a general position, but a fairly firm position without dissecting the age groups and so on and so forth, and the different sports and so on and so forth. So I think we should be taking a general, very firm position that eliminates the need for onerous paperwork and work on the part of administration. I think if it's clear that people entering the arena have to be double vaccinated, it's up to the teams to make sure that their players are. And if they're not, it goes back to them, type of thing. So I know that it's not easy to administer, but I think we have to definitely show some leadership that we want people to be vaccinated, double vaccinated, and where it is appropriate before they enter our facility in any one of them. Doesn't only apply to hockey. I'm particularly, Mr. Gibbon mentioned that Hockey Canada has position. I'm particularly disappointed that Hockey Alberta hasn't made any announcements. And to me, I would agree that we're looking to them for certain positions, but notwithstanding that, we can take a position ourselves that's general but firm. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Janot. In the absence of objection and recognizing that councillors can bring things onto committee of the whole agenda in any event, I am content to leave the discussion, and if it is to be pursued at a future meeting, I or another can make that request more formally through administration. So I appreciate Mrs. McNabb that I put you in the middle of a council discussion where you don't belong. It was just, I thought it was an easy segue dealing with our facilities to bring this in, and I had intended to bring it forward later in the meeting in any event. So I thank you for your patience sitting through that, and I appreciate your perspective on it. And I thank you and all of your staff for the incredible work that you've had to do throughout the pandemic, and most recently this past weekend to to adjust to an ever-changing regulatory environment at the provincial level. So thank you for that. Is there anything else for Mrs. McNabb? If not, then I thank you for your report and allow you to leave. That takes us to agenda item 7.1. Request for decision with respect to natural gas procurement. We've heard the presentation this morning. Mr. Given, anything to add to this request for decision?
Nothing to add, Your Worship, but just briefly, the recommendation is to see in the report, the council approved the purchase of natural gas under a partial hedge fixed price contract for a term of up to 4 years. Again, that motion is structured to provide administration the flexibility to look for best value when we actually do go to market. And I hope that the presentation from Energy Associates give council a little bit more insight on some of the terms and the complicated nature of the market that we're going to be entering into. I know there was some discussion about sort of the, why is this coming to council? As noted, it is not an insignificant purchase that does have an impact ultimately on the municipal budget. And so that's why it's here. But I think as council appreciates, this is a time where administration needs council's approval to act quickly in that live market situation. And so that's why it is structured, that's why the recommendation is structured as it is, and why we're here seeking your approval to move forward with that procurement as described by EAI earlier this morning.
Thank you for that, Mr. Given. Any questions, or is a councillor prepared to make a motion? Councillor Keller-Grampy?
I'm prepared to make that motion that council approve the purchase of natural gas under partial hedge fixed price contract for a term up to 4 years.
Thank you for that, Councillor Keller-Grampy. Is there any debate on the motion? Seeing nothing, I will call the question. All those in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried. So thank you, Mr. Given. So I guess now we wait to hear from EAI as to when they open or when they engage in the live bidding process. Agenda item 7.2 is next, National Day for Truth and Reconciliation.
Your Worship,
Mr. Are you, I don't see Ms. Riddell.
Ms. Riddell isn't online. She's provided me some additional information just for council's background, but you'll all be aware of this recommendation as it's come, as the others have, from committee. The recommendation is that council proclaim September 30th as the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation in the municipality of Jasper, and the council directed administration to work with the community and Indigenous partners to prepare a plan to honor and recognize the day. I'll just maybe speak a little bit as we're getting already into September. Council may wonder what could be organized, and so I'll speak to that. Ms. Riddell has shared some information. In our early conversations with some representatives of Jasper's Indigenous community, the first suggestion is that we not rush into creating events, that we really take a thoughtful approach. And we certainly appreciate the wisdom of that recommendation and advice to us. And so we certainly will be doing so. But the municipality is also working with other partners like the Jasper Film Club, who are bringing a screening of a locally relevant movie about the AWN community to Jasper. And so we're doing some small steps this year. But the larger context is that the federal government has passed legislation that makes the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation a federal statutory holiday, which will be recognized by federally regulated employees and organizations where their labor agreements require federally regulated events to be recognized, such as the municipality of Jasper. And I think that that's an important note for council. Our collective agreement with CUPE is written in such a way that federally recognized statutory holidays are also recognized under our CUPE agreement, and our out of scope staff also under council policy receive the same statutory holidays as our in scope staff, our unionized staff. And so the municipality of Jasper will be recognizing the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation as a statutory holiday as required under our labor agreements. And so there is that internal action. But in terms of external community events, the advice that that we're receiving outside of the support of bringing that film to the community for the end of the month is that we take some time to really have a thoughtful approach to future year's activities. That said, the first part of the both parts of the recommendation still stand, and it would be appropriate for council to formally proclaim the 30th as the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation, so that it is demonstrated that municipal council acknowledges and respects that day and respects the opportunity to build our relations with our Indigenous partners in the community and also across the country.
Thank you for that, Mr. Given. Any questions with respect to the matter for administration? Otherwise, I would look perhaps for a motion from a councillor. Councillor Wilson, sorry, I was frozen. I had to go in and out again.
Yeah, no problem. Okay, well, yeah, I would be happy to make the motion that council proclaim September 30th the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation in the municipality of Jasper, and that council direct administration to work with the community and Indigenous partners to prepare a plan to honor and recognize that day.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Is there any debate? Seeing none, I will call the question. All those in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried. And as it is a proclamation, typically there would be a paper document for me to sign. So administration at some point can just tell me where that is, and I will attend there and sign that proclamation. So it is part of the record. Agenda item 7.3, Evergreens Foundation. Again, this was canvassed a week ago at Committee of the Whole with a presentation from Evergreens CAO Kristen Chambers. Pardon me, Mr. Given.
Sure. Thanks very much, Your Worship. I can speak very briefly to this. Would just, as you said, remind council there was a presentation on this from Ms. Chambers at the last committee meeting, which was a little while ago now. But in the report, there's essentially a recommended motion that Evergreens has provided, which is recognizing the requisition authority of the Evergreens Foundation, that council confirm its support of the Foundation's strategic plan and support for the Evergreens Foundation in development of new senior supportive housing in Wildwood and Victor Lake. So this is the request from Evergreens is an acknowledgement of their plan and essentially an endorsement of their plan. And this is important because as the motion states, Evergreens does have the ability to requisition municipalities, so we'll have an impact on municipal taxes ultimately. But Ms. Chambers spoke to the need for additional housing, and I think the well thought out plan that she presented and that makes up a part of the package here. I know Councillor Butler is council representative on the Evergreens Board of Directors, and he may have some more perspective that he wishes to share. But from an administration perspective, I think this is good practice. Evergreens is doing their best to be transparent and forward-looking, coming to council provide an opportunity for you to see their plan and to understand it rather than just, I suppose, after the fact, sending across the bill. This is an acknowledgement that there are capital needs into the future, that Evergreens has a thoughtful plan of how they're going to address those needs, and that ultimately the municipal council is being asked to acknowledge that and acknowledge that it will likely have an impact in the requisition that Evergreens will have to levy into the future. I'll leave it there, Your Worship, but I would suggest that the motion or a motion from council of support and acknowledgement would be similar to what's contained in the Evergreens package, just on the second page towards the end of Ms. Chambers' letter.
Thank you, Mr. Given. Any discussion? Councillor Butler.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Given. I don't really have anything to add at all. Mr. Given very adeptly outlined the reasons behind this, but I am willing, if council is ready, to make the motion.
If I might just throw a suggestion your way, Councillor Butler, I noticed that the motion as prepared is slightly different than the motion suggested by Evergreens Foundation, and I took the time to try and sort out where they are at and why they might be there. And it is that first phrase, recognizing the requisitioning authority, that is missing from the motion that we have. And it is perhaps critical to Evergreens in a way that I don't entirely appreciate. I also, though, have a bit of a struggle with respect to supporting the entire strategic plan when I'm not really sure that I know exactly what it is, although I certainly do support that part of the plan that proposes new seniors supportive housing in Wildwood and Victor Lake. So I was thinking of a motion that says, council confirms its support of a regional approach to developing affordable supportive living facilities for seniors. That's just another way of acknowledging the requisitioning authority. And supports the Evergreens Foundation in development of new seniors and supportive housing in Wildwood and Victor Lake as part of its strategic plan. So it's a little bit different than saying we support the strategic plan. And I only say that because I'm not entirely sure what the entirety of the strategic plan is. And it's not our business in any event to support or to comment necessarily on the strategic plan of another standalone entity. But I do support what they're doing on a regional basis. And I think that the development of senior supportive housing in Wildwood and Victor Lake is an excellent thing for them to do. And I'm happy to support that. So a bit of a long introduction and a bit of a long motion as well, but I thought a little more nuanced, but I leave it to some extent to Councillor Butler. You're far more familiar with the needs of Evergreens on this issue, and I will support any motion that moves this forward, showing that we support new senior supportive housing in Wildwood and Victor Lake. Go ahead, Councillor Butler.
Well, interesting. Essentially, the entire strategic plan has been presented to council. There really isn't any part of it that is not in the report that was provided. I don't think, I myself am not particularly worried one way or the other. We could look to wording similar to what you suggested. However, I think what Evergreen is looking for here is an acknowledgement, and let me back up. The board of Evergreens unanimously supports the strategic plan as it was presented to council. And I think what we are looking for in part is a confirmation that the member councils do stand behind the support that has been given by each individual member. And it is quite true, as a standalone organization, we don't per se need to demonstrate support from councils, but we are asking for it. So I am comfortable with the wording as provided. One of the reasons for supporting the strategic plan as presented is, if we change and nuance the wording, as you suggested, Mayor Ireland, it still can leave open, and this might be fair in the future. There is a recognition that council composition will be changing in all of the municipalities. There's a recognition that municipalities generally would hope to see more seniors housing developed sooner and earlier in their own communities. And the strategic plan lays out in a very clear fashion how Evergreens determines and prioritizes the building within the various communities. So that aspect is captured in the strategic plan, but I fear would not be captured if we worded it in a little more, as you said, nuanced fashion, as you've suggested. So I guess what I'm saying is, if I'm to make the motion, I would prefer to make the motion as presented, also as presented in the request from Evergreens. And you correctly noted that administration's motion, I think, may have just been an oversight, overlooked the part recognizing the requisitioning power of Evergreens. So all that being said, I'm happy to defer and allow someone else to make the motion. Probably I would prefer, if I'm going to make the motion, to make it as written in the request.
Thank you for that, Councillor Butler, and I'm glad that I offered it only as a suggestion, not as a motion. And perhaps I just misread the report that we had. I took that as an update to the strategic plan rather than the strategic plan, but I'm still happy with it. And if you are interested in making a motion that follows more closely the suggested motion from Evergreens, I'm happy to defer to you and to support that motion.
Sure, thanks very much. That's a good point that you raised. I would think it was probably more accurate if we had called that an updated strategic plan rather than an update to the strategic plan. The important specifics of the strategic plan are included in that update that was circulated. And so if it is all right with you, I would go ahead and make the motion. And now, due to technical challenges, I don't have the wording in front of me because I'm working off my phone, but it would be the motion as written in the request from Evergreens Foundation at the bottom of, I think it was page 2 of that. Oh, here I have it. So I will move that, recognizing the requisitioning authority of the Evergreens Foundation, Council confirm our support of the Foundation's strategic plan and support the EGF in development of new seniors supportive housing in Wildwood and Victor Lake. Thank you.
All right, thank you for that motion. Councillor Butler, any debate on that motion? I will then call the question. All those in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried. And that takes us to agenda item 8, which is for reference only. Agenda item 9, correspondence for information, consideration, or action. There is nothing on the agenda. Agenda item 10, other new business. Is there other new business? I will move to agenda item 11 then. Councillor reports. Are there any Councillor Reports. Councillor Keller-Harampy.
Just to update you, Community Futures Business Walk scheduled for September 13th has been canceled due to the current COVID conditions. The new walk will be announced for later September, early October.
Thank you. Any other reports? I will briefly report then that Wednesday last week, September 1st, the municipality hosted an online information center session regarding the Connaught utility servicing. Mr. Gibbon presented primarily. Mike Steffler from WSP was available for technical information, but was not called upon. We had a limited number of residents who tuned in for the live session, which concluded relatively quickly, but I think those who tuned in were satisfied with the responses that they got. The entire episode was recorded and is available on our YouTube channel, and I think communications from the municipality has sent that out to individuals. And I can advise that Friday of last week I attended a municipal governance committee of AUMA, and of particular interest is a developing concept of allowing entertainment districts in municipalities. So something to keep watch on. AUMA at the committee level is discussing that now, and will come to some recommendations that are forwarded to the provincial government in due course. But for the time being, just be aware that there is a move underway to have municipalities able to declare sections of a community an entertainment district, and therefore liquor licensing, for example, might be changed in outdoor settings. It's just a developing matter, but has implications for our community, I would think. And that is all that I have to report. If there is nothing else, there is a list of upcoming events. As agenda item 12. And is there anything else that councillors wish to raise? Councillor Journeau.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just referred to the All Candidates Forum, which is presently in our activity center. And of course, the other forums are being held virtually. I hope that the new COVID restrictions are not going to cancel that or change that in any way possible. That's all.
Thank you for that. That will be up to the organizers, I presume, but they should be aware. But it will also be up to our staff to regulate compliance with existing regulations. So it may be a challenge. Thank you. I believe, although this may change as well, that September 15th, there is a NETMA gathering scheduled. But that I understood was to be indoors at a local restaurant, so I don't know whether we will hear any changes on that. Councillor Keller-Harampy.
I saw an email last week that that's cancelled, Mayor Ireland, and that.
Okay, thank you for that. I had not seen that. All right, if there are no further upcoming events to bring to the attention of council, I will turn to agenda item 13 and ask for a motion to adjourn. Councillor Journeau, thank you for that. All in favor? We are adjourned. Thank you all. Thank you to members of the public who tuned in. Enjoy your day, and we will see most of you again next week. Thank you all.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good meeting. Thanks, councillors and members of the public.
Thank you, everyone.